and I know that we're all happy to have your economic message and the important points that you made echo across this room and across the country. So just sum up before we open the floor and take questions. The bottom line here is that no matter who you hear from on that debate stage, you know, the 47 some odd candidates on the Republican side for president, essentially it's like when my kids played with their Legos. Legos, you know, are interchangeable. It doesn't matter which piece you use or try to fit together. It doesn't matter, you know, what color they are. They're all the same shape. They all sing off the same song sheet. You could have any one of them. And what it means for the middle class and working families, if heaven forbid any of them were to become president, is disastrous economic policy that got us into the worst economic crisis when George Bush was president since the Great Depression. And we were losing 750,000 jobs a month when Barack Obama took office. Thanks to Democrats in Congress and to President Obama, we've now had that 64 straight months and probably tomorrow 65 straight months of job growth in the private sector. And what the Republicans would do is they'd turn us backwards. They would go back to their buddies, their cronies, and make sure that they were taken care of really, really well, cut taxes for them, make sure that you focus on the wealthiest 1 or 2%, and hopefully that largesse trickles down to everybody else. Well, we've watched that movie, and we've seen the end result. It's a nightmare that we don't want to repeat, and we're here to make sure that we stand in the breach as Democrats to draw a contrast and show America's voters what a Democratic presidency, continuing a Democratic presidency, would be like for prosperity in America. So thank you so much, and we'd be happy to take questions. Jennifer.
Yes, Madam Chairman. You talked about the Voting Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act was not only people of color, but also people with disabilities. And the majority of voting sites are not fully accessible. 4 years ago, Governor Romney did not choose to campaign for this population, but this time Jeb Bush and Governor Kasich and Scott Walker are aggressively courting the disability vote. Is the Democratic Party reaching out to this population, and what are you doing tactically or substantively or policy-wise to attract the 56 million Americans with disabilities?
Well, first of all, when it comes to the Voting Rights Act, whether you're talking about Americans with disabilities or the African-American population, Hispanic population, women, young people, Republicans have assaulted voting rights. They have done everything they possibly can to shrink access to the polls. So, I mean, with all due respect, talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. The Republicans have demonstrated exactly how they feel about expanding access to the franchise. They've done all they can as soon as they got the reins of power in most states across the country, whether it was in the Republican legislatures or states run by Republican governors. They passed aggressive laws to make it harder, not easier, for large populations of Americans to cast a ballot. And so I have seen no evidence whatsoever that they would do anything except throw more platitudes at these groups. And when it comes to their actions, take the steps, as they have been, to shrink access to the polls. When it comes to Democrats' priorities, it's Democrats that ensured that the Americans with Disabilities Act became the law of the land. Democrats that pushed for the reauthorization and ensured that it was expanded and had broader reach. We have been a champion as a party when it comes to diversity, including adopting the broadest ever participation goals in our convention. I mean, just let's compare conventions. It isn't the Democratic Party that actually has to put a handful of minority individuals up front so that the camera sees them. You see the depth and breadth of diversity in our party, including Americans with disabilities, African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders. The list is too long for me to name how much depth we have in terms of our diversity. And as a result of that diversity, it means that in our policies are reflected the priorities of those communities. Unfortunately, because the Republican Party has no depth when it comes to diversity, and can essentially only pay lip service and add window dressing, that's why you don't see any real champions or progress that produce any results.